So dear students, in the previous video we have talked about the process of classification of all the organisms, what we called as diversity, presence of huge number of organisms, and the way they were slowly step by step classified into various groups, the hierarchy from species to kingdom, and we have talked about how we converted the huge number of organisms into 5 kingdoms to minimize our study, to make our study easier. And the 5 kingdoms which are made by the scientist Robert Whittaker. The 5 kingdoms we have talked about: the Monera, Protista, Fungi, Plantae and Animalia. In this video we will be concentrating on the basic characters that they have. Let us begin with the first, that is called as the first kingdom, that is Monera. If you see how Robert Whittaker classified these organisms, you will get a basic idea of the characters. You can see in the basic classification what he did. He separated the prokaryotes and eukaryotes. So very clearly you can say that all organisms in this group are prokaryotic. Very clearly they have a cell in which the nucleus is underdeveloped. We have talked about that even in chapter 1, that such nucleus which does not have all the basic parts of the nucleus. Only the important part called chromatin is there, but there is no nucleoplasm, no nuclear membrane. Such a underdeveloped nucleus is known as nucleoid, and the cell is called as a prokaryotic cell. So these organisms are always prokaryotic, and they always have a cell wall. But the cell wall is unlike that of plant cells. The cell wall is made of glucopeptide. It's a different chemicals. It's a combination of carbohydrate and protein, of course. You can understand the cellulose or cell membrane. Cellulose is made up of glucose, only carbohydrate, but cell membrane is made up of protein and lipids. But this cell wall is made up of carbohydrate and proteins. Carbohydrate and proteins. Very simple kind of organisms, not much developed, as you can see. If the nucleus is not well developed, you all know nucleus is the controlling center of the cell. If the controlling center is not well developed, then the cell also is poorly developed. Very simple. The third thing, how they carry out their nutrition. So nutrition is carried out in both ways, autotrophic and heterotrophic. The Monera includes organisms like bacteria and blue-green algae, which is also considered as a type of bacteria. Nowadays, a lot of writers, they have started writing them as cyanobacteria. Now, bacteria, bacteria in general does not possess chloroplast, but so it does not carry out photosynthesis, but it carries out a process called chemosynthesis and synthesizes its food. So you'll call them autotrophic but not photosynthetic. But as far as blue-green algae is concerned, you can see the term green. The green word has come from chloroplast. So they are capable of photosynthesis. So that's it, nutrition. As far as reproduction is concerned, in these organisms it is found either by fission. In bacteria, when the conditions are favorable, they divide by binary fission. When the condition is unfavorable, they even go through multiple fission. But as far as the blue-green algae is concerned, it shows a process of fragmentation. 2 basic types of asexual reproduction, which you have studied in your junior classes. So these are the 2 types of. One very, very important part that you must know about Monera is these organisms are capable of what is called as nitrogen fixation. The blue-green algae, bacteria like rhizobium bacteria, which are found in the root nodules of leguminous plants. They convert atmospheric nitrogen into nitrate salts, and these salts then dissolve in water, and when the roots absorb the water, these nitrate salts dissolved in water along with water goes to the plant cells, and the cells get their required nitrogen. Nitrogen is essential for the synthesis of proteins, DNA, RNA. So a very important role is played. This is the process by which even plants, all the green plants, well-developed plants, also get their nitrogen only in the form of nitrate. So you can one way say that if Monerans were not present, then even the green plants, the better plants, developed plants that we say, would have been incapable of capturing their nitrogen. So very, very important role played by this group called Monera. The simplest group, of course, the first kingdom that we have studied. Then we'll go to the second kingdom. The second kingdom called as Protista. And the classification will make it very, very clear to you what Protista are. They are unicellular eukaryotes. In the first video, I have told you how Robert Whittaker classified the organisms into kingdom. If you study that, you will understand that in the group Protista made, he kept only eukaryotic cells, no doubt, but which were unicellular. Never in their life they had more than one cell. So that is unicellular eukaryotes. Number two, they had no cell wall. None of the organisms kept in the group Protista ever developed cell wall. They lacked cell wall. The only covering around the cell is the cell membrane. Nutrition, of course, is similar to that of Monera that we have studied, is found both autotrophic and heterotrophic. Heterotrophic. The fourth process of reproduction. Only fission is found in them, the binary and multiple fission. A basic kind of asexual reproduction. The fifth point that you need to know here is this organism for the first time developed locomotory structures. Locomotory structures in the sense the structures developed by the body which helps the organism to move from one place to another place. These locomotory structures are basically three types, Some organisms in this group have pseudopodia, the false feet like structures which helps in locomotion. Some organisms develop cilia, some other organisms develop flagella. The name will give you very clear idea about what are the examples found in this group. Pseudopodia से आपको समझ में आ जाता होगा. We are talking mainly about amoeba. Cilia, if you can remember, we are talking about organisms like paramecium, and flagella, euglena. It is euglena, the only protista which contains chloroplast, and that is why this group, because of the euglenoids, large number of euglenoids are there which contain chloroplast. So we call this group even having the process of autotrophic nutrition. Is that right? So these are the basic characters of the kingdom called Protista, which is a bit different from Monera. What are the various differences you can notice? They are eukaryotes, Monera were prokaryotes. Monera contains cell wall, it contains no cell wall. Monera do not have any locomotory structure, this group has locomotory structure. So basically these three differences you can easily mention there. We'll go to the third kingdom, the fungi. Kingdom number 3, the fungi. Are of course eukaryotic, and they are both unicellular and as well as multicellular. In this group, both the type of organisms are kept. The basic thing why they are kept there, they are eukaryote and they have a cell wall which is made of very special carbohydrate called chitin. In no other living organism such a cell wall is present. So these are very different from them. They always lack chloroplast. So there is no chance of any autotrophic nutrition. So the nutrition in them is done by a special method of heterotrophic nutrition, what is called as saprophytic nutrition. You have studied in junior classes also that the organisms which depend on dead and decaying organic matters, they are called as saprophytes, and that is the only method of nutrition in this group. As far as reproduction is concerned, these organisms reproduce by unicellular organisms reproduce by a process called budding, and the multicellular ones they reproduce by a process called spore formation. These fungi are basically of three types of fungi. One, that is yeast, what I was talking about. Yeast is the unicellular one, and the other two, the molds and the mushrooms, are the two types of fungus which are multicellular in nature. Yeast and molds both are microscopic. Mushrooms are clearly visible to our naked eyes. The fungus has also these are the three types of fungus. I am talking about one process that you should remember. The fungus are always found, not always, most of the time found having a symbiotic relationship with algae. Symbiosis or symbiotic relationship means a relation between two types of organisms in which both benefit each other, both help each other. So they help each other in a way. Like you might have seen, the cattle, buffaloes and cows grazing around, and you will see the crows and other birds sitting on their body, even pricking their beaks inside the ears. But the cattle does not disturb, doesn't feel disturbed, doesn't try to remove them. The thing is, there are parasites and insects on their body which they cannot remove by their hand. They are quadrupedal, they walk on four legs. With the tail, they use it for certain, but the tail cannot come up to their mouth and ears. So they are taking the help of these crows. The crows get their food. The insects are their food. So crow is benefited. The cattle, the buffalo, they are getting rid of the parasites and insects which are sucking their blood. So even that is benefited. So you can in a way call it as a symbiotic relationship. What is the relationship between algae and fungus? Algae has chloroplast, so it can carry out photosynthesis, no doubt. But for photosynthesis, you will study that we need. आपने पढ़ा है photosynthesis होता है in the presence of sunlight, chlorophyll, everything. But the basic raw materials that is needed are carbon dioxide and water. So carbon dioxide is there, but water, from where algae will get water? Algae are such plants which are not found on land, and they don't have such long roots which can absorb water from the ground. So how to get the water? So fungus which are spongy in nature. You might have seen mushrooms, they are fungus. They are so spongy that they absorb the moisture from the atmosphere. The moisture present in the atmosphere is captured, and when it becomes enough amount of water, the fungus supplies it to the algae. So it is helping the algae. By getting the water, algae prepares the food by photosynthesis, and that synthesized food is given to the fungus in return, So both are helping each other. So that type of relationship is developed by the fungus with the algae, called as symbiosis. That is something extra you need to know about fungus. Otherwise, fungus is characterized by eukaryotic nature, cell wall of chitin, present absence of chloroplast, and reproduces by budding and what is called a spore formation. The fourth group that is called as the kingdom Plantae. The kingdom Plantae. So which organisms were kept in this kingdom? All those organisms which were multicellular, definitely eukaryotic, which had cell wall made of cellulose and which contained chloroplast, which were capable of photosynthesis. अगर किसी भी ऑर्गेनिज्म ये चार कैरेक्टर्स मिल गए आपको कि क्लोरोप्लास्ट साइटोप्लाज्म में है, सेल के बाहर सेल वॉल सेलुलोज का बना हुआ है, it is multicellular and all the cells are eukaryotes. It's very simply we will call that organism as a plant and we will keep it in the kingdom Plantae. Okay, so all the organisms had these characters, common characters, but there were differences too. और जो basic idea है classification का कि ठीक है common character तो एक group में डालिए, differences है तो अलग group बनाइए. तो plant के अंदर बहुत सारे differences नजर आए. उस आधार पर kingdom Plantae was again classified into two basic types. The two basic types are called as cryptogamy and phanerogamy. Cryptogamy and phanerogamy. On what basis? Plants which never produced seeds. Okay, seeds are produced from flowers. So we can say flowerless plants are called as cryptogams, and the flowering plants which always produced flowers, they were kept. So बहुत ऐसे plants हैं दुनिया में जिनमें कभी flower आता नहीं है, उनमें seed formation होता ही नहीं है, तो उनको रख दिया गया क्रिप्टोगैमी में. और वो प्लांट जिनमें लगातार फ्लावर आता है, फ्लावर में पॉलिनेशन फर्टिलाइजेशन होता है और सीड्स बनते हैं, all those organisms were kept in a group called phanerogamy. तो ये तो सारे कॉमन कैरेक्टर हो जरूर है. इनमें भी तीन तरह के थे. So the group cryptogamy was again classified into three main types. The first group was called as Thallophyta, second group called as Bryophyta, B-R-Y-O, and the third group, the P is silent, P you don't pronounce it, you will read it as Pteridophyta. मैं ज़्यादा टेंशन में नहीं आना. Phyta means plants, Phyta means plant, तो Phyta तो ठीक है. The main term you need to know is Thallo, Bryo and Pterido. Thallophyta, what is the basic thing? Thallo comes from a Greek term thallus. Thallus means flat. So these plants had a flat body. Now flat body in the sense what? When we talk about plants, जनरल आदमी को जब प्लांट की बात आप करेंगे, प्लांट सुनते ही कॉमन जो बायोलॉजी से बहुत ज़्यादा रिलेटेड नहीं जनरल लोग हैं, प्लांट सुनते उनके दिमाग में एक स्ट्रक्चर आता है कि ज़मीन के नीचे कुछ पार्ट होगा रूट्स और ज़मीन के ऊपर कुछ पार्ट होगा शूट. रूट शूट से ही वो प्लांट को पहचानते हैं. लेकिन यहाँ क्या है? द बॉडी इज फ्लैट ऑन द सरफेस ऑफ वाटर, बिकॉज दीज ऑर्गेनिजम्स आर एक्वाटिक. तो बिल्कुल सरफेस पर फ्लैट है, ना कुछ नीचे है जिसको हम रूट बोलते हैं, ना कुछ ऊपर ग्रो होता है जिसको हम शूट बोलते हैं. तो ये बिल्कुल असंभव है. यू कैन क्लियरली राइट देयर इज नो रूट, देयर इज नो शूट. ऐसा कोई स्ट्रक्चर होता ही नहीं है. सच बेसिक. तो फिर लोग बोलेंगे आपको कि भाई रूट नहीं है, शूट नहीं है, पत्तियां नहीं है, व्हाई आर यू कॉलिंग इट ए प्लांट? तो प्लांट कहलाने के लिए कैरेक्टर क्या चाहिए? इन सब के पास ये सब यूकैरियोट है, दे आर मल्टी सेलुलर, दे हैव सेल वॉल ऑफ सेलुलोज एंड दे हैव क्लोरोप्लास्ट। तो ये चारों बेसिक कैरेक्टर है उसके पास, देयरफॉर दे आर केप्ट इन प्लांट किंगडम। द एग्जांपल्स यू कैन से ऑल द एल्गीज, जो पानी में काई लग जाता है, फ्लैट पोर्शन, दैट इज कॉल्ड एज एल्गीज। एंड यू कैन, काई जो लगता है, काई कैसा होता है? फ्लैट होता है, ना कोई लीफ, शूट, रूट कुछ भी नहीं होता है। So they are in thallophyta. Then came bit developed plants which developed, root like and shoot like structure. क्या मतलब हुआ इसका? रूट लाइक, रूट जैसा, शूट जैसा, मतलब हम सही मामले में उनको रूट और शूट नहीं बोल सकते हैं। रीजन क्या है? बेसिक बायोलॉजिकल रीजन ये है, व्हाट इज रूट? रूट में ऑस्मोसिस से वाटर आ जरूर जाता है ग्राउंड से, बट द रूट का मेन काम है कि ट्रांसपोर्ट्स द वाटर एब्जॉर्ब टू द लीव्स, टू ऑल अदर पार्ट्स, एंड द रूट इज कैपेबल ऑफ डूइंग दैट बिकॉज ऑफ द प्रेजेंस ऑफ अ टिश्यू वी हैव स्टडीड इन चैप्टर टिश्यू कॉल्ड एज जाइलम, याद कीजिएगा। शूट क्या होता है? शूट में तो लीफ में फोटोसिंथेसिस से फूड बन जाता है, but the food is transported to other parts through a tissue again called phloem. So यहाँ क्या होता है कि xylem and phloem both are absent. So in the absence of these two, the root and shoot are not actually carrying out the process of the root and shoot. तो इसलिए हम बोलते हैं रूट शूट जैसा कुछ है, बट इनको हम ट्रू रूट शूट नहीं बोल सकते हैं। Such plants are always amphibious. क्योंकि root is incapable of transporting the water, so these plants wherever they are found, they need water on the land surface. जहाँ गीली मिट्टी है, पानी लगी हुई है मिट्टी पर, वहीं ये ग्रो हो सकते हैं, क्योंकि जमीन के नीचे से ये वाटर खींच पाते नहीं। So they are amphibious. Amphibious word कहाँ यूज होता है? फ्रॉग को amphibian क्यों बोलते हैं? Because it lives both on land and water. So plants or any organism which needs both land and water, they are amphibious. So this group of organisms are called as amphibious. Then came the third group, which are in true sense terrestrial organisms, terrestrial plants. Terrestrial plants मतलब जो सूखे जमीन पर भी ग्रो कर सकते हैं। तो सूखे जमीन पर ग्रो क्यों कर पा रहे हैं? क्लियर है कि उनके रूट्स जमीन में इतने अंदर जा रहे हैं जहाँ से वो वाटर एब्जॉर्ब करके ट्रांसपोर्ट भी कर पा रहे हैं, मतलब क्लियरली दे हैव ट्रू रूट्स एंड शूट्स। क्यों? क्योंकि अब इनमें xylem एंड phloem develops. So that is why this group. एग्जाम्पल यहाँ पर आप लिख सकते हैं, द ferns, झाड़ियों में पाया जाता है ferns टाइप ऑफ प्लांट्स, which were the first type. मैंने इवोल्यूशन में बताया था आपको कि एक तरह का ऑर्गेनिज्म आता है, लिविंग ऑर्गेनिज्म, ओरिजिन ऑफ लाइफ, और वो धीरे धीरे बदलते बदलते दूसरे ऑर्गेनिज्म में कन्वर्ट होता चला जाता है। तो दुनिया में आप पढ़ेंगे लाइफ फर्स्ट केम इन वाटर। सो फर्स्ट प्लांट्स दैट डेवलप्ड इन दिस यूनिवर्स वेयर थैलोफाइटा। फिर उसमें धीरे धीरे जनरेशन आफ्टर जनरेशन के बाद वेरिएशंस आते गए, बदलाव आते गए, कुछ बेहतर कैरेक्टर डेवलप हुए, वो ब्रायोफाइटा में कन्वर्ट हुए, ब्रायोफाइटा कन्वर्टेड टू टेरिडोफाइटा, कुछ क्वालिटी इंप्रूव होता चला गया, बिल्कुल रूट शूट नहीं था, रूट शूट जैसा स्ट्रक्चर आया, फिर सही मामले में रूट शूट बन गया। द ऑर्गेनिजम्स वर एक्वाटिक, इट बिकेम एम्फीबियस, देन बिकेम टेरेस्ट्रियल। तो दे आर थ्री डिफरेंट टाइप्स, but all these three have one common characters. What are the common characters between these three? That all three are incapable of producing seeds. इनमें seed नहीं बनता है, ठीक है ना? Then came the seed producing plants, which are again classified into two groups called gymnosperms and angiosperms. Gymnosperms and angiosperms. These plants produce seeds which are not enclosed inside fruits. such seeds are called naked seeds, or also called as cones. Naked, नंगा सीड, नंगा मतलब क्या है, सीड का कवरिंग क्या है, सीड ढका रहता है किस चीज से, फ्रूट से। हाँ, हमारा बदन ढका हुआ है कपड़े से, अगर वो जो ढका हुआ है वो जिस चीज से वो हटा दिया गया तो फिर आप क्या कहलाते हैं, नंगे कहलाते हैं आप। तो बिल्कुल उसी तरह से सीड ढका हुआ है फ्रूट में, फ्रूट नहीं है, तो सीड्स आर नेकेड सीड्स। लैटिन भाषा में जो ये नाम वाम दिया गया था प्लांट के ग्रुप्स का, आप क्लियरली देखेंगे, जिम्नोस का मतलब होता है नेकेड, एंड स्पर्म्स का मतलब होता है सीड्स। तो बिकॉज ऑफ नेकेड सीड द ग्रुप नेम वाज जिम्नोस्पर्म, ठीक है ना। तो फ्रूट्स आते थे, इसमें दो तरह के प्लांट्स आपको मिलेंगे, पाइनस एंड साइकस आर द टू टाइप्स ऑफ प्लांट्स। पाइनस कॉमन भाषा में इंग्लिश में पाइन ट्री भी बोला करते हैं, आर द टू टाइप्स ऑफ प्लांट्स व्हिच आर फाउंड इन दिस। Because these plants produce cones, therefore these trees, they are woody trees, very strong stem in them. They are also called as coniferous trees. Coniferous trees are the trees which produce cones, matlab which produce naked seeds. They are gymnosperms. They are gymnosperms. And the next group, the angiosperms. They are the modern day plants which produce fruits with the seeds. और जितने भी प्लांट आपको याद आते हो अपने दिमाग में, जिनमें आपने फल लगा हुआ देखा है, फल के अंदर आपको बीज दिखता है, कोई भी पेड़ का नाम ले लें आप, आम, संतरा, नींबू, पपाया, any name you take, orange, where fruits are there and inside the fruit seeds are found. They are all angiosperms. They are all angiosperms. So these are the basic classification of kingdom Plantae, which are on ground level. There are 5 different types, but the first 3 types are similar in one way, that they do not produce seeds, so they are grouped in one group called cryptogamy. The last 2 both are capable of producing seeds, so they both are phanerogamy. But there is a difference. One produces seeds without fruit, gymnosperm. The other produces seeds with fruit. They are called as angiosperms. थोड़ा सा एंजियोस्पर्म को और थोड़ा डिटेल में जानेंगे, इनका कोई फर्दर क्लासिफिकेशन नहीं है, बट एंजियोस्पर्म्स के बारे में थोड़ा सा देख लेंगे हम लोग। The angiosperms are all those plants in which fruits are formed, and inside the fruits there are seeds. If I talk about the seed is a structure in which there is a covering which is called as seed coat. The outer covering of the seed is called seed coat. Inside the seed coat there is a structure which in some plants is found in one piece. In some other plants you will see they are present in 2 pieces. जैसे मटर का ऊपर का छिलका हटाएंगे तो अंदर ऑटोमेटिक लगता है कि 2 तरीके से ब्लेड से काट के 2 पीस में रखा गया है उसको, है ना। चना में भी होता है, जो ब्राउन छिलका हटाएंगे और पीला पीला आपको नजर आता है ना, दैट पीस in 2 pieces or in 1 piece, that part is called as cotyledon. And in the cotyledon, if one, then here, if there are 2, then at the joint there is one structure that is called as embryo. Embryo is the structure which germinates to form root and shoot. तो एम्ब्रायो ही नए प्लांट में ग्रो करता है, बट फॉर जर्मिनेशन एंड टू डेवलप रूट एंड शूट इट नीड्स एनर्जी, एंड दैट एनर्जी इज प्रोवाइडेड बाय cotyledon. That is the basic structure of a seed. बताना मुझे ये है कि अभी जो आपको हम लोग एक क्लासिफिकेशन बताया, एंजियोस्पर्म्स, these angiosperms are of 2 types, और अब आपको बहुत आसानी से समझ में आएगा. They are called as monocot और dicot. The plants are called as monocot plants or dicot plants. Now mono मतलब one, di मतलब two. So what is this? These are those plants in which the seed contains only one what? Cotyledon. And side by side you can write which contains two cotyledon. Plants in which seeds contain वो line up लिख लेंगे two cotyledons. Generally these plants have soft stem. Stem इनका बहुत soft होता है, easily breakable, you know, जैसे rice plant है, तो rice का गया अपना stem तोड़ दिया, wheat तोड़ दिया, देखते होंगे आप लोग, banana tree, केले का पेड़ का stem कैसा होता है, you can break it easily, you can compare with mango tree, guava tree, you can break it, but you need to apply huge amount of force. It is not breakable easily. So they have hard stem. That is also one of the difference between them. लेकिन सबसे clear cut difference होता है the leaves. The leaves of this plant show, you know, parallel venation. Venation are the marks, V-E-I-N-A-T-I-O-N. Venation are the marks on the leaves. Those marks are actually the marks of vascular bundle, I mean, through which xylem and phloem travels along the leaves. There are some plants like eucalyptus, if you see, there are marks like this. You know, it's not mathematically parallel, but they don't intersect each other, they go side by side. So that is why they are called parallel. या फिर banana, केले का पत्ता तो आपने देखा ही होगा, उसमें आप देखेंगे मार्क्स ऐसे होते हैं, पैरेलल मार्क्स, ठीक है ना जी? But the leaves of dicot shows reticulate मतलब branched venation. You look into any leaf and you will see there is a midrib and there are many side branches from which many more branches come like this. No particular pattern there. So just by watching the leaves you can say whether the plant is a monocot or a dicot. Or you can see the roots. The roots show here fibrous roots. अगर stem end कर रहा है और जमीन के नीचे आप root खोजने जाएंगे, all the roots are of equal length and coming out from one place like a bunch. गुच्छे की तरह root निकलता है सारा, इसको बोलते हैं ना fibrous root. और यहाँ आप लिखेंगे क्या? These plants show tap root system. The stem continues as root, main root, and then the main root has many more branches, and it is deep rooted. You cannot pluck them easily. It is harder to pluck. This is easier to pluck. And then we will talk about the floral parts. Even the floral parts are, you know, trimerous. Trimerous बोले तो 3 or, you know, multiple of 3. अगर इस plants के जो आप colored leaves देखते हैं ना, petals बोलते हैं, क्या होते हैं petals या stamen, you count them. It will be 3 in number or 6 or 9 or 12. 3 या multiple of 3. You can easily understand. This is a monocot. As far as dicot is concerned, the flowers will be pentamerous. तो penta से समझ में आया होगा 5 or, you know, multiple of 5. So you count the floral parts, you'll understand the plant is monocot or dicot. You see the roots, you'll understand. You see the leaves, you'll understand. If the seed is there, अगर seed मिल गया तो बहुत आसान है, क्योंकि name seed के आधार पर है, seed पर नहीं, seed के अंदर जो cotyledon है, based on the number of cotyledon, they are classified into 2 types. So out of the 5 kingdoms, in this video we have studied the 4 kingdoms and their characters: Monera, Protista, Fungi, and Plantae. The animal kingdom, Animalia, is a huge kingdom, very large. So there will be a separate video only on animal kingdom that we will discuss in the next video. Thank you very much.